Hey folks, Ethan Miller here. Ever had one of those days where the road just changes? Where everything you thought you knew about your journey, about your destination, about your life just flips on a dime? It's a gut punch, ain't it? Makes you question every mile you've ever driven, every choice you've ever made. I bet some of you out there have felt that same jolt. Drop a comment below if you've ever had life throw you a curveball when you least expected it. I'm talking about the kind that rattles your whole rig. For me, that curveball came wrapped in a blizzard and a phone call. But let me back up a bit. My story, the one that changed everything, started like any other haul. I'm a man of the road, always have been. My rig, the Wanderer, she's my second home. But my first home, that's where my heart truly was. With Sarah, my wife. We built a life, brick by brick, dream by dream. I worked hard, always played by the rules, lived by a code of honor my old man taught me. Integrity, respect, loyalty. Those weren't just words to me, they were the fuel in my tank. And Sarah, she was my co-pilot in life, my reason for every long mile, every late night. I loved that woman more than the open road itself, and that's saying something for a trucker. This particular run was a big one. A cross-country haul, Chicago to Santa Monica, right down the legendary Route 66. A classic run. The kind that sings to your soul. The Mother Road, they call it. I'd done it a dozen times, but this time felt different. Sarah had been a little distant lately, preoccupied. Nothing I could put my finger on. Just a vibe. I tried to shake it off. Just tired, honey, she'd say. Long days at work. I bought it. I always bought it. My trust in her was as solid as the steel frame of my truck. The call came in from dispatch. Ethan, got a high priority load. Medical supplies, gotta be in Santa Monica by Friday. You up for a quick turnaround on 66? My first thought was Sarah. Another week away. I hesitated. You sure this can't wait, Brenda? I asked, my voice a little rough. Negative, Ethan, this is critical, lives depend on it. That was enough for me. Duty calls. Always. I told Sarah, she gave me a quick hug, a peck on the cheek. Be safe, honey, she mumbled, already back to her phone. A little pang hit me, but I dismissed it. Just my imagination. Before I rolled out, I stopped at Big Rig's Diner for a final cup of joe. Old man Jenkins, a legend of the asphalt, was nursing his own coffee in the corner. He'd seen more miles than most men have seen sunrises. He looked up, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Ethan, he rasped, the road ain't just asphalt and white lines. It's a mirror. Shows you what you're made of. And sometimes what you ain't. He took a long sip. And sometimes it shows you what others are made of too. Keep your eyes open, son. Not just for bears. He winked, then went back to his coffee. His words stuck with me. A strange echo in the back of my mind as I finally pulled the Wanderer onto the on-ramp. The iconic Route 66 sign looming large. The journey had begun. The first few days on 66 were classic. Illinois gave way to Missouri. The arch of St. Louis fading in my rear view. I hit the rhythm of the road, the hum of the diesel engine a familiar lullaby, passed through small towns, saw the old diners, the neon signs flickering like ghosts of a bygone era. I stopped at a few, grabbed a greasy burger, chatted with some locals, met a young couple fresh out of college trying to drive the whole route in a beat-up old sedan. They were full of dreams, full of hope. Reminded me of Sarah and me once upon a time. I gave them a few tips, told them where the best pie was in Oklahoma. Good kids. Allies on the road in a way. But the road ain't always smooth. Just past Joplin, Missouri, a nasty squall rolled in. Rain came down like God was emptying a bucket, turning the highway into a slick, treacherous ribbon. Visibility dropped to zero. Had to slow the Wanderer to a crawl, my knuckles white on the wheel. That's when you earn your pay. When every nerve ending is screaming and you're fighting the elements just to stay between the lines. It was a test for sure. Push through it though, always do. A trucker's gotta be tougher than the weather, tougher than the miles. I was making good time pushing through Oklahoma, the flat plains stretching out forever. My mind was on Santa Monica, on getting this load delivered, on getting back home to Sarah. I pictured her face, her smile. The little pang of unease from before had mostly faded, replaced by the familiar anticipation of a job well done. Then, just as I was nearing Amarillo, Texas, my CB radio crackled to life, cutting through the static like a knife. Breaker, breaker, this is Highway Patrol 7 Alpha. All units listen up. Route 66 westbound from Adrian, Texas, all the way to Flagstaff, Arizona is officially closed. Repeat, closed. Massive rock slide near Petrified Forest National Park, Arizona, combined with unexpected severe blizzard conditions moving in from the Rockies. No estimated time of reopening. Advise all truckers to find alternative routes or turn back. My heart sank. Closed? The Mother Road? A rock slide and a blizzard? That was unheard of, especially this time of year. My load, my deadline, my mind raced. Alternative routes would add days, maybe even a week. The medical supplies couldn't wait. There was only one option. Turn back. Head east. Back the way I came. Back towards home. A strange mix of frustration and relief washed over me. Frustration for the job, relief that I'd be home sooner. I picked up my cell, ready to call Sarah, tell her the news. But something stopped me. A flicker of Old Man Jenkins' words. Keep your eyes open, son. Not just for bears. A cold dread started to creep in, a feeling that had nothing to do with the blizzard. I decided to surprise her. Just show up. It felt right. Or maybe it felt like fate. Turning the Wanderer around felt unnatural, like driving against the current. Every mile I put behind me, heading east instead of west, felt like a step backward in my career, but a step forward towards Sarah. I kept thinking about her. My Sarah, 28 years old, with that laugh that could light up a whole diner. I was 34, and she was my world. I pictured her face when I walked through that door. The surprise, the joy. That thought was the only thing keeping the bitterness of the closed road from eating at me. I figured I'd make it home sometime in the early hours, maybe catch her still asleep, or just waking up. A real surprise. The drive back was different. The familiar landmarks, the diners, the truck stops, they all looked different heading the other way. I usually loved the solitude of the road, the time to think, but this time my thoughts kept circling back to Sarah. Her quietness lately, the way she'd always be on her phone, a little too quick to end calls when I walked in. I'd brushed it off as work stress, but Old Man Jenkins' words kept echoing. Shows you what others are made of, too. I tried to push it down. No, not Sarah. Not my Sarah. She was my rock, my steady star. We had something real, something built on trust and respect. I stopped for gas in a little town in Oklahoma, the kind of place where time seems to stand still. The air was cold, crisp, a stark contrast to the warmth I hoped to find at home. I grabbed a coffee, strong and black, just how I liked it. Stood there for a minute watching the snow flurries start to dance under the gas station lights. A knot tightened in my stomach. It wasn't the coffee. It was that feeling, that gut instinct a trucker learns to trust. The one that tells you when a tire's about to blow or when the road ahead is slick with black ice. This felt like black ice, but for the soul. I pulled out of Oklahoma, pushing the Wanderer hard, but safe. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of this nagging feeling. Was I just tired? Overthinking? Sarah was a good woman. She was. We'd been through so much together. From the early days, barely scraping by, to building our life, our home. She was always there, or so I thought. The closer I got to our exit, the more my chest tightened. It wasn't excitement anymore, it was a strange mix of anticipation and dread. Like I was driving into a fog bank, not knowing what was on the other side. My principles, my values, they were my compass. And right then that compass was spinning wild. Finally, the familiar exit sign for our town appeared, cutting through the pre-dawn gloom. The streetlights cast long, lonely shadows. Everything was quiet, peaceful, too peaceful. I pulled into our driveway, the crunch of the gravel under my tires sounding unnaturally loud in the silence. The house was dark, save for a faint light coming from our bedroom window. I cut the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. It's just a surprise, Ethan, I told myself. Everything's fine. But my gut screamed otherwise. This wasn't just a surprise. This was the moment of truth. I grabbed my duffel bag, the one I always kept packed with essentials, and quietly opened the truck door. The cold morning air hit me, sharp and biting. I walked up the porch steps, my boots making barely a sound. The front door was unlocked, which was unusual. Another small detail that pricked at my unease. I stepped inside. The familiar scent of our home, a mix of Sarah's perfume and fresh coffee, usually comforting, now felt alien. I moved through the living room, heading for the bedroom, my heart pounding a rhythm against my ribs that had nothing to do with the long drive. As I got closer, I heard it, a low murmur, Sarah's voice, and another voice, deeper, familiar. My blood ran cold. I stopped dead in my tracks just outside the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. I could see a sliver of light and Sarah's silhouette. She was on the phone. And the words I heard next, they hit me like a runaway freight train. "He's on the road, honey. He won't be back for days. Yeah, I know, I miss you too. Tonight, my place, Ethan's out of town." My breath hitched, my vision blurred. It wasn't just a murmur. It was a confession. My best friend, Mark, his voice. I recognized it now, low and conspiratorial. The pieces slammed together in my mind, a brutal, sickening puzzle. The distance, the phone calls, the quick goodbyes. It wasn't work stress. It was Mark, my best friend, the guy I'd known since high school, the guy who'd been the best man at our wedding. And Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I loved, the woman I'd worked my fingers to the bone for, the woman I'd trusted with every fiber of my being. She was planning to betray me, with him, right here, in our home, while I was out there, busting my ass, thinking of her. I pushed the door open, slowly, deliberately. The creak of the hinges was the loudest sound in the world. Sarah spun around, her eyes wide with shock, the phone still pressed to her ear. Her face went from surprise to pure, unadulterated horror in an instant. The color drained from her cheeks. She stammered, "Ethan? What are you? You're home early." Her voice was a shaky whisper. The phone slipped from her grasp, clattering to the floor. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my duffel bag still clutched in my hand, my world crumbling around me. The man of principles, the one who always did things right, was watching his life fall apart. She started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The words I'd heard, the look on her face, the phone on the floor, still connected to Mark. It was all there. The truth, stark and ugly. The Route 66 had been closed, forcing me to turn back, to come home early. And in doing so, I discovered that she was planning to betray me with my best friend. The regret on her face was instant, raw, undeniable. But it was too late. The damage was done. My heart, once full of love and trust, was now a shattered mess. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was done. The silence in that room was heavier than any load I'd ever hauled. Sarah was sobbing now, her hands covering her face, her shoulders shaking. She kept muttering, "I'm so sorry, Ethan, I'm so sorry." But those words, they just bounced off me. They were hollow, empty, like the promises she'd made. I looked at her, really looked at her, and it wasn't my Sarah anymore. It was a stranger, someone I thought I knew but clearly didn't. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd worked for, she was gone, replaced by this person who could plan such a cold, calculated betrayal. My mind was a whirlwind of images. Mark laughing with me at our wedding, clinking glasses, promising to always have my back. Sarah, her eyes shining when I proposed, swearing forever. All of it, a lie. A cruel, twisted joke. My principles, my values, they were my foundation, and she had just dynamited them. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle in my chest. There was no going back from this. No explanation, no apology, no amount of tears could unhear what I'd heard, unsee what I'd seen. The man of integrity, the one who always did things right, knew what he had to do. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. There was no anger, just a profound, bone-deep sadness. It was like watching a beautiful bridge collapse, knowing you can never cross that river again. I walked over to the nightstand, picked up her phone, and saw Mark's name still on the screen. I ended the call, then deleted his number from her contacts. Then I deleted it from mine. He wasn't my friend. He was a snake. And she was a stranger. I looked at Sarah, her face streaked with tears, her eyes pleading. "Ethan, please," she whispered, reaching out a hand. I took a step back. "Don't," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. It was the hardest word I'd ever spoken. "There's nothing to explain, Sarah. I heard enough. I saw enough." My gaze swept around the room, at the pictures on the dresser, the wedding photo on the wall. They felt like relics from another life, a life that had just ended. "I thought we had something real," I continued, my voice barely a whisper. "Something built on trust, On honor. I guess I was wrong. The weight of the world felt like it was pressing down on my shoulders, heavier than any load the Wanderer had ever carried. She tried again. Ethan, I swear it was a mistake. I don't know what I was thinking, but her words were just noise. The regret on her face was clear, yes, but it was too late. The moment of decision had passed. My values demanded a clear line. There was no gray area here, no compromise. I was a man who paid the price for the life he wanted to lead, and this was the price of her choices. I turned and walked out of the bedroom, leaving her there, alone with her tears and her instant bitter regret. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a tomb. I went straight to my office, the small room where I kept my paperwork, my maps, my life on the road organized. I pulled out a suitcase, a small one, and started packing. Just the essentials. Clothes, my shaving kit, a few photos of my folks. I didn't need much. Everything that truly mattered, everything that made this house a home, had just been ripped away. The silence of the house was broken only by Sarah's muffled sobs from the bedroom, a sound that ironically felt distant, like it was happening to someone else, in another lifetime. As I packed, my mind drifted back to Old Man Jenkins. The road ain't just asphalt and white lines, it's a mirror, shows you what you're made of, and sometimes what you ain't, and sometimes it shows you what others are made of too. His words had never rung truer. The closed Route 66, the unexpected turn. It wasn't just a detour for my rig, it was a detour for my life, forcing me to confront a truth I never wanted to see. It was the ultimate test, not of my driving skills, but of my character, my resilience. I finished packing, the small suitcase feeling impossibly light yet carrying the weight of a broken heart. I walked back through the living room, past the kitchen where we'd shared so many meals, so many laughs. Each step was a step away from a future I'd envisioned, a future that was now shattered. Sarah was still in the bedroom, her crying having subsided into quiet sniffles. I didn't go back in. There was nothing left to say. The conversation had ended the moment I heard her voice on the phone. I scribbled a quick note, just a few words, and left it on the kitchen counter. No anger, no accusations, just a statement of fact. I know. It's over. It felt cold, but that's how I felt. Cold. Numb. The man who loved his wife more than the open road was now just a man with a broken heart and a long road ahead. I picked up my keys, the ones for the Wanderer, and walked out the front door, closing it softly behind me. No slamming, no drama, just a quiet final exit. The pre-dawn light was starting to break through the clouds, painting the sky in shades of gray and pale pink. It was a new day, but for me, it felt like the end of an era. I got back into my truck. The Wanderer, my faithful companion. She was waiting for me, solid and reliable, unlike everything else in my life right now. I started the engine. The familiar rumble was a comfort, a steady beat in the chaos of my mind. I put her in gear, pulled out of the driveway, and headed for the highway. Not back on Route 66, not yet, but back on the road. The only place I knew how to be right now. The road to healing. The road to figuring out who Ethan Miller was now that everything he thought he knew was gone. The highway stretched out before me, a black ribbon under a sky that was slowly bleeding into dawn. Every mile I drove, I felt like I was leaving a piece of myself behind. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a dull ache in my chest that felt heavier than any engine block. Sarah, my Sarah, the woman I'd sworn to protect, to cherish, and Mark, my best friend. The betrayal was a double-edged sword, cutting deep into every corner of my life. It wasn't just a broken heart, it was a shattered trust, a fundamental shift in how I saw the world and the people in it. I drove for hours, the hum of the Wanderer a constant, almost therapeutic drone. The road was my only friend now, the only thing that made sense. It didn't judge, didn't lie, didn't betray, it just was. I passed familiar truck stops, places where I'd shared laughs with fellow drivers, places where I'd called Sarah just to hear her voice. Now they felt alien, tainted. I couldn't bring myself to stop. Not yet. I just needed to drive, to put distance between me and the wreckage of my life. The sun climbed higher, painting the landscape in colors that felt too bright, too cheerful for the darkness in my soul. My mind kept replaying the scene, over and over. Her face, the phone, Mark's voice, the instant regret in her eyes. Was it real? Or was it just regret at being caught? My principles screamed at me. A man of honor doesn't tolerate deceit. A man of integrity doesn't look the other way. I'd always believed in doing things right, in paying the price for the life you wanted. And the price of this betrayal was everything. It was the end of a chapter, a painful, abrupt closing of a book I thought I'd read to the very last page. I pulled into a desolate rest stop somewhere in Arkansas, the kind of place where only the most desperate or most tired truckers stop. The air was cold, biting. I killed the engine, and the sudden silence was deafening. I leaned back in my seat, staring out at the empty highway. A single tear tracked down my cheek, cold and lonely. Just one. I wiped it away quickly. No time for that. A trucker's gotta be tough, a man's gotta be tough, but damn, this was a different kind of tough. This was the kind that hollowed you out from the inside. Old man Jenkins' words came back to me again. The road ain't just asphalt and white lines, it's a mirror. And what I saw reflected back at me wasn't just my pain, but a stark clarity. This wasn't a mistake I could fix. This wasn't a flat tire I could change. This was a fundamental break. And as much as it hurt, I knew deep down that walking away was the only honorable path left for me. The road ahead was uncertain, but at least it was mine, and mine alone. No more co-pilots for a while. Just me, the wanderer, and the endless miles. The days blurred into a monotonous rhythm of driving, eating at roadside diners, and sleeping in the cab. I called dispatch, told Brenda I was heading west again, but not to Santa Monica. Just need to clear my head, Brenda. Long haul. She didn't press. Good woman. She knew the road could be a cruel mistress sometimes. I redirected my route, aiming for the vast, open spaces of the American West, places where the sky was big enough to hold all my sorrow, and the silence was deep enough to drown out the echoes of betrayal. I found myself gravitating towards the older, less traveled sections of Route 66, the parts that had been bypassed by the interstates. These were the true veins of the Mother Road, places where time seemed to have forgotten to move on. I'd stop at abandoned gas stations, their pumps rusted, their signs faded, and just stand there, breathing in the dust and the memories. It was a strange comfort, this shared sense of being left behind, of a past that couldn't be reclaimed. It mirrored my own feelings in a way. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in the Arizona desert, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, I pulled over. The silence was profound, broken only by the whisper of the wind. I got out of the truck and just stood there, looking at the vastness. It was then that the full weight of it hit me. Not just the pain, but the finality. My life with Sarah, the home we built, the future I envisioned, it was all gone, and there was no going back. The regret on her face, I realized, was for being caught, for losing what she had, not for what she had done to me. That distinction, though subtle, was a crucial one. A wave of grief washed over me, raw and unfiltered. I wasn't just mourning a relationship. I was mourning a dream, a version of myself that was now obsolete. But beneath the grief, a tiny spark began to flicker, a sense of freedom. The road had always been my escape, my sanctuary. Now, it was my rebirth. I was stripped bare. Everything I thought defined me gone. But what remained was the core of who I was, a man of values, of principles, who would always choose integrity, no matter the cost. This wasn't the end. It was a brutal, necessary beginning. I got back in the Wanderer, started her up, and pulled back onto the road. The headlights cut through the gathering darkness, illuminating the path ahead. It wasn't the path I'd planned, but it was a path nonetheless. And for the first time since I'd walked out that door, I felt a faint sense of purpose. I didn't know where I was going, or what I would do, but I knew I was moving forward. The Mother Road, in her own harsh way, had shown me the truth, and now she was guiding me towards a new horizon. This was my resurrection, forged in the fires of betrayal, on the open road. The miles kept rolling, and with each one, the sharp edges of the pain began to dull. It wasn't that I forgot, or that the betrayal didn't sting anymore. It was more like a scar forming, a permanent mark, but one that no longer bled. I found a new rhythm on the road, a different kind of peace. I wasn't just hauling freight anymore. I was hauling myself piece by piece back together. I started seeking out the quiet places, the forgotten stretches of highway, the diners where the coffee was strong and the conversation was sparse. I needed the solitude, the space to just be, to rebuild. I spent weeks just driving, sometimes without a clear destination, just letting the wanderer lead the way. I saw sunrises over the Rockies that made my heart ache with beauty, and sunsets over the Pacific that felt like a benediction. I learned to appreciate the simple things: a hot meal, a clear sky, the steady hum of the engine. I talked to other truckers, shared stories, but kept my own close to my chest. They saw the weariness in my eyes, the quiet resolve, but they didn't ask. Truckers understand. Sometimes the road is your confessional, and the only one listening is the wind. One evening, I found myself parked overlooking the Grand Canyon. The sheer immensity of it, the layers of rock telling stories of eons, it put my own troubles into perspective. My pain, while real, was just a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. It was a moment of profound clarity. I realized that while Sarah's betrayal had shattered my world, it had also in a strange way set me free. Free from a lie. Free to redefine what integrity and love truly meant to me. It wasn't about what I had lost, but what I had gained. An unshakable understanding of my own worth and the kind of truth I would demand from life. I started making plans, not for a new relationship, not yet, but for a new life. A life built on the principles I held dear, without compromise. I thought about Old Man Jenkins again. The road ain't just asphalt and white lines, it's a mirror. Shows you what you're made of. And I realized that mirror had shown me that I was still Ethan Miller, a man of values, a man who paid the price for the life he wanted. The price of this lesson was high, but the wisdom gained was invaluable. It was the elixir I was bringing back from my ordeal. I decided to head back towards the Midwest, not to my old home, but to a new beginning. Maybe a different route, a different kind of haul. The road had been my crucible, burning away the illusions, leaving behind the pure metal of who I was. I was still a trucker, still a man of the road, but I was also something more. I was a survivor, and I was ready to share the hard-won lessons I'd learned. This wasn't just about a closed road. It was about an open heart, finally seeing the truth. So what's the takeaway from all this, folks? What's the big lesson Ethan Miller learned out there on the open road, after the mother road closed and sent him home to a truth he never wanted to face? It's simple, really, but it's the hardest truth to live by. Integrity. It's the foundation of everything. You can have love, you can have dreams, you can build a home, but if it ain't built on integrity, it's just a house of cards waiting for the next gust of wind to blow it down. I loved Sarah with every fiber of my being. I gave her my trust, my loyalty, my honor. I thought she was my co-pilot, my partner in this journey of life. But when the chips were down, when the road got tough, she chose a path that completely contradicted everything we stood for. Her regret, that instant look of horror on her face, it wasn't for the act itself, but for the consequence, for being caught. And that, my friends, is a crucial distinction. True regret leads to change. Regret for being caught just leads to more careful deception. This story, my story, is about love, yes, but it's also about respect, about honor, and about knowing your own worth. I was a man who did everything right, who loved deeply, who believed in doing things the right way. And even then, betrayal can strike. It's a harsh reality. But here's the moral. You can't control what others do, but you can always control how you respond. You can choose to uphold your own values even when others fail theirs. You can choose to walk away from what diminishes you and towards what truly honors you. The Route 66 closing was a blessing in disguise. It forced me to confront a truth that might have festered for years, slowly poisoning my life. It was a brutal awakening, but it was necessary. Sometimes, the universe throws a wrench in your plans, not to punish you, but to redirect you, to show you a path you needed to take all along. A path towards self-respect, towards a life lived authentically without compromise. So, if you're out there, listening to this, and you're facing your own closed road, your own unexpected detour, remember this. It might just be the universe's way of showing you something important, something about yourself or about the people around you. Don't shy away from the truth, no matter how painful. Embrace it, learn from it, and always, always, drive with integrity. Because that, my friends, is the only true compass you'll ever need on this long, winding road of life. Stay safe out there and keep your eyes on the horizon. This is Ethan Miller, signing off. Hey folks, Ethan Miller here. Ever had one of those days where the road just changes? where everything you thought you knew about your journey